goes at a time, right? So I still have a little bit of roughness between the string transitions. I get stuck a little bit. You can hear the other string ringing out. So it's hard to clean that up. This is why, like, I'll do one more chug and then I'll finish up the video. Okay. I love being me. I really do. Oh, jeez. When I die, I'm taking this with me. Yeah. That's crazy. What the hell am I doing for time here? Did I go over? Yeah, I already went. Okay, I already go over. I guess this will be the part 2. I can never keep my videos at 11 minutes and 48 seconds. But the thing about playing live loud, you have to get used to it. I do play with earplugs at a certain volume. Like, this is loud. It's not unbearably loud where my ears are ringing, whatever, but it will dull the senses after a couple of weeks. But when you're playing in your room and you're like this, sounds fine, right? Do that, and then all of a sudden you hear this ringing out, that ringing out. Your finger doing slurring, stuff like that. So get the pattern down unplugged. Then take it to the volume you need to take it to. Because until you play at loud volumes like that, you will never ever get a clean sound. You'll never ever be clean live. This is something amp modelers can't do for you. Amp modelers cannot punch you in the head like this. That's why people still like tube amps and stuff like that. But that said, the tube amp, I'm not saying it's going to go the way of the Dodo, but you know, there's the amp modelers you have so much more control over. You know, like, you can really finesse that sound. So you could take the Kongzilla out, you know, at stage volume. You could take your concert volume, stage volume, whatever you want to call it. You could take that volume out of there and make it smoother to play and more bearable. But then you lose the you know, like, you want the Kool-Aid Man crashing through the wall kind of sound, right? It's like, yeah, just completely unrelenting, especially with this freaking guitar. This guitar is so savage. So there's a lot of ways to achieve that, but there's really no way to get around playing loud at high gain or distortion. You know, like I was saying in the last video, I kind of lost my train of thought a bit, but Yngwie was talking to Rick Beato, and Rick Beato asked him, said, you know, you play so clean, how much, you know, you don't use that much distortion, do you? He goes, you'd be surprised. He goes, it's an unwieldy amount of distortion he uses. That just gives you an idea how clean he can play, right? And he uses really light gauge strings to help himself out. He uses 8s. I didn't think he used strings that light. I'm using 9s on this. I got 10s on everything else. But him, it's because, you know, to do the bends, the 8s really... I used to play 8s years ago. And I did notice when I was playing really loud live with 8s, the thinner, the saying goes, the thicker the string, the thicker the tone. Not necessarily better or worse, it's just you have a thicker, more resonation, it's going to be a thicker, muddier, darker tone, typically, even if it can be pretty bright, but, you know, a thinner string is always going to be slightly brighter. But a thinner string, because you're taking away a lot of the low end, right, cleans up at high volume. So you don't have to worry about low end at high volume, especially in something like this. Or if this is running through, you know, you got... The best sound I ever got out of this setup years ago was, I had an SM57 in the front of this thing, an SM57 in the back of this thing, and my Randall HT100 head at the time, a transistor head, which I had a GFX1 twin tubes on, rack effect on it. So all my effects were basically the rack effect was this plus pedals and all that. Now it's all pretty much in there. You know, it did have a real tube sound in it because it had two 12AX7s in the rack, but there was a line out directly to the PA on top of that. If you want a melodious, the sound was heavenly. It was. I had all the amp volume I needed on stage without being overkill and deafening. I could actually hear the guys on the other side of the stage. Probably wasn't playing much louder than what I was just playing right now, which is still pretty loud, but like say in a bar, it wouldn't be considered that loud because you know, whatever. So it was a good sound on the stage. You could feel it. The PA was doing the heavy lifting, and like I play with a god awful lot of distortion, right? Because it's when you do clean up on your playing with a lot of distortion, one of the things you get is that, you know, when you clean up, you still get that extra overdriven, compressed sound that when it distorts, it gives all your notes just a little sizzle at the top, right? Where something else that happens when you play really loud, this is why more speakers is better. Like a little amp like this through 4 speakers sounds great. It's a professional rig, $100 amp, $1,500 cabinet back in 1991. Professional rig. Like people don't understand what they think professional is $10,000 and up. You know, that's the buy. It doesn't work like it. Are you going to get the sound? Are you going to get the clarity? Whatever. But the 40-watt Hot Rod Deluxe, that's only 40 watts, but that's a loud tube. It's 180 watts in, so you get the full 40 watts out. You get it really early on. Hence why that amp is so loud. You know, it's one of the main complaints about the Hot Rod Deluxe is it's so loud and so good for the guys that buy it to play it in the apartment. They don't realize that that thing's meant to be on stage. It's not even really a studio amp per se. It's almost too loud for the studio. It's really meant to give you, hence the Hot Rod, right? That's why they call it a Hot Rod. It's meant to be loud live. So you cut through that, you know, tone deaf drummer, whatever. But when you get really loud, a lot of times if your amp is just loud and you're just like cranking it to 11 kind of thing, a lot of times you get like more of an overdrive than a distortion, right? It doesn't, like Ingve was saying, it doesn't distort. You just got all this low end and muddiness, right? So you have to compress a bit to get to clean it up, right? And like I say, all the settings on that, except for the volume and the presence, is on 0. You know what I mean? Because I'm getting everything out of the pedal. So this is my preamp right here, so to speak. This is what's giving me all the outrageous distortions. But as I get louder, I see that the distortion goes away, but the overtones get really muddy and really thick. So by thinning out your strings, i.e. going to 8s, which are really hard to intonate because they're so freaking light, you can press them out of tune so easy, but they're really, really easy to play. And 8s, I liked them for years because when you got really loud, you never had that muddy top end. And because you were loud, you had all the drive. So you had all the good things about playing loud and none of the bad things. Now, 9s, no problem with 9s. I use really, really stiff picks. These are Jazz 5 picks. These things are about, not quite an eighth. They're about 3/32 thick, almost an eighth. They're really, really thick. But that's the only way I can get that kind of speeds. With the Jazz 2 picks, I can sort of get it. But you can hear there's a little bit of a spring in the pick. And I have to work a little harder with that pick to keep it clean. So for me, cleaner's better. Now, while I'm playing acoustically, I can hear other external noises just from my fingers switching strings. It's like a little cat meow in there. You hear it? I don't know if you guys are picking that up on the camera. Live, that's not going to sound, you know, blended in like that. It's going to sound, you're going to hear that, right? That's what happens when you get really loud. So why would I even have the discussion on playing loud? I mean, most of the guys on YouTube want to stay on YouTube and stuff like that. But, you know, they might have a dream of playing live one day. And for me, I'm, the old school guy. You know, Gen Xer, live music was our life. You know what I mean? And especially if I had guitars like this. I am convinced this is my best sounding guitar I've ever had. Maybe not the best playing, but since I've made the action lower, one thing I've noticed also about playing live, or not live, but playing loud through this, is that when I do play live, I'm not really hearing a lot of buzzing coming out of the guitar. You know, I got 5 speakers here. That's going to be an honest tell. If you mess up, you will hear it. You know, like there's enough clarity there, enough mid cut out. Like I added no mids to this. I don't need to because it's going to cut through. The guys that play with like the negative 20 dB on the mids, you know, and then pump the bass and pump the tone, you know, for that old Metallica kind of sculpted mid sound. You miss so much. Your ears miss so much, and that sound does not work live. It never did. Never. Even Anthrax, as heavy as they are, they have to add mids just to cut through. It's just they've got so much low end. It's insane. So Anthrax is still probably the heaviest band out there that's not in a drop tuning. They're probably about a half step low, maybe a step low, whatever. So they're heavy that way. I don't know what they tune to. Back in the 90s, almost everybody was a half step low, so one fret down. And that was very consistent amongst metal and stuff like that. Number one is it wasn't because they wanted necessarily sound heavy. This is going to sound funny, but most of the singers just didn't have the they couldn't sing at the standard pitch. I learned to sing at standard pitch, but singing low at standard pitch is very, very high, or very, very hard, right? So, like I say, work on cleaning up your sound at a louder volume. Not everybody can do it. I get those people that live in apartments, stuff like that. Like I live in the countryside, and you know I still have to be mindful about how loud this thing is. You know, like